Hi folks, welcome back. Today's video is a really special one that I'm super excited about. We have hit 357 subscribers. So you guys that like, subscribe, comment, I really appreciate you. And to celebrate that special number 357, we are going to be taking a look inside this beautiful Smith and Wesson Model 19-4 from the late 70s, a beautiful American 357 Magnum revolver, a real classic. Before we get started on taking it apart, the reason that taking this one in particular apart is so exciting to me is that I bought this from the original owner who bought it back in the 70s, and he kept it in his nightstand drawer for a few decades before I ended up with it. I've never shot this. I've had it for, I don't know, 8 or 9, probably like 9 or 10 years now. I've never shot it. I've just kept it in the beautiful state that it's in. He claimed less than a box, and I absolutely do believe that because this is a immaculate revolver. But he didn't want it anymore because he was going to buy a semi-auto handgun, I think a CZ that he wanted, and he couldn't think of any reason why anyone would need 2 handguns. And so I completely agreed with him. I can't imagine what kind of weirdo would have 2 guns, especially 2 handguns. I mean, they're so similar. I can't imagine why you would do that. But we're going to take a look inside this beauty today. So we are clear. And you get to see those beautiful recessed cylinders there when we open that up. We'll look at it again later. We'll start by taking loose the stocks here with a properly fitted screwdriver. This is one that I have ground to fit, and it is a fantastic fit on these Smith and Wesson screws. Going to try not to block the camera. Push down. There's the right one. There's the left one. We'll set those aside for the time being. And a brief mention, since this has been together for probably about 40 years or more, I did use some Croil on these screws a couple days ago to make sure that I could actually get the screws loose. Because they were quite tight when I tested them. I didn't want you guys to be sitting here watching me fiddle around with these screws for a long time. So they are pre-loosened. And if you ever have a screw that is being very stubborn, that Croil really does a fantastic job. I've come to really be impressed with it over the years. And these screws, even though I have pre-loosened them, they are a little bit gritty. I guess that's what happens when they sit there for that long. But we're probably gonna be the first ones, actually I'm quite certain we're the first ones to take a look in this revolver since it left the factory back in, I believe, 1979 for this one. It's a long time. I think this is important just because of how long it's been and the humid climate down here in Southeast Texas. Probably a good idea at this point to take a look in it and just make sure that everything is doing well inside, that we're not getting any corrosion in those hidden areas with the humidity and all. Swinging the cylinder out, now that I've got the screws out, pulling forward on the yoke. There we are. Being careful with that part so that we don't torque it in any way. Set the cylinder aside for a moment while we work on the rest of the gun. And this isn't really so much a tutorial on disassembly. I might do one of those later on. This is a look to see the condition of this gun after this long period of time. So take the side plate off. I'm going to smack the grip like this so that it pops off. Try it here on the edge of the bench. It's being a little stubborn. There it went. And I dropped it on the floor. But that's okay, it's a well carpeted floor for that reason. We've got our side plate right there. And with it came the little firing pin block, hammer block, safety. And get them back out. Set those to the side. I'm gonna relieve tension on the mainspring. Actually, I guess let's take a look at this because I'm kind of jumping ahead. And what do we see here? Well, you can tell, I think you can tell, where the difference is between where I've wiped it on the outside over the years and then the dirt that's hidden beneath the side plate there. You can see kind of a line where the side plate covered. Let's take a swab and just see if we can get a look at this. Some black residue, probably from the brief firing that it had, but you don't see much of it. It looks pretty clean in here, doesn't it? Fairly dry. Notice there's not, like when I took apart that Python for the first time, there was kind of a light coating of almost like a lightweight motor oil inside of it. I'm sure it's some corrosion inhibitor, but this, and maybe it's just dried out over the years, but I don't see any damage to the parts. It's just a little bit of dirt, a little bit of residue built up. And you can tell it really hasn't been carried because a little bit of rust actually in here. Very small amount of rust, but not bad. You can tell it hasn't been carried because there's no real lint or anything, and it's all just a small amount of firing residue. We'll go ahead and take loose the mainspring here. Gonna go to the tension screw on the front of the grip. There we go. It's stubborn. There we go. It's starting to come out. Very, very stubborn. But now that it's moving, it's smooth, just quite tight. I'm usually in the habit of not tightening these down a ton, just because they are held by the grips on the front end to an extent. Once the revolver's back together, and the tension from the mainspring also more or less keeps it from coming loose. Take the mainspring out. Looks good, nice and straight. You can tell no one has put a bend on it or anything trying to modify the pull weight. Sometimes see that on these if they've been messed with. And the screws on this look fantastic. You can tell that no one's been messing around with it with a ill-fitted screwdriver or anything. At that point, I'm going to pull back on the cylinder latch so the bolt comes back. I'm going to pull the trigger to get that hammer all the way back, lift it out, let the trigger back forward. Looks pretty clean. I mean, really not much to say there. You can see there's really no handling wear on the exterior areas of the hammer as compared to the interior. Just in really wonderful condition. A little bit of wear on the face of the double action dog there, but not a big deal. That's probably just from being manipulated over the decades. But no real loss of material, just some finish wear. Beautiful case hardened part. Really wonderful. All right, and now to get off the rebound slide, I'm going to use this tool. A lot of people use a screwdriver for this, and I have in the past, but I like this little Smith Master tool. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I like it because it works really well, and it's protected here so it doesn't mar up the frame. Push in, lift up. Ooh. Slipped, but no harm, no foul. And over time, a lot of these you'll see wear on the bottom of them. There's a little bit on this one, but almost none. Looks basically brand new. Good strong spring. Hasn't taken any real set over the years. Doesn't seem. Significantly stiffer, I believe, than my Model 66 that's more heavily used. Let's use the clean side here. Look in here, see what we get. A little bit of residue under that. Yeah, not much. Pretty clean overall. Definitely seen dirtier revolvers than this. And I'm going to use this little piece of wood here just to pull back on the hand so that I can lift out the trigger. And I like to do that because these things are usually kind of sharp, and I have on some of them cut my finger a little bit before, trying to get that started back from the groove that it rides in. I'm going to be very careful here to make sure I don't let this hand slip forward and drag along the back of the frame and cause damage. There we are. We're out safely. A little dirty, but not much to say about it really. I'm not going to take out the cylinder stop. I don't really like doing that on these unless it's necessary. We should be able to get a good enough inspection here without that. Set that to the side. I do want to look right here though. It looks like maybe a little bit of rust developing here. But overall, just a little bit of firing residue. Pretty clean. Although I'm still surprised at just how dry it is inside. I mean, there's really no lubrication in here at all. Go ahead and take off the cylinder latch. This is a little tight. We might end up leaving this here. You know what? I think I'm going to. Because the rest of the revolver looks so good that it moves freely. I don't see any evidence of rust underneath there. And since this isn't a full disassembly video, it's just an inspection, I don't think there's really justification to do that. So yeah, I'll do a disassembly video later, actually, with the Model 66 to where we take that out. But on this, with that being fairly tight and I didn't soak that screw, I think it's probably best to leave that alone for now. Let me go ahead and take the cylinder down real quick, go off screen for a second just to put the end of this rod into a vise that I have over here that's padded. It works for this very well. And these are reverse thread because the Smith and Wesson cylinder spins counterclockwise, so the threads are clockwise to prevent it backing out. Very clean. Very, very clean. Not much to say about it. Actually, well, that's a part. Go ahead. Well, no, I'm not gonna waste your guys' time. We'll do a reassembly video here in a minute. Maybe do a part 2 to put it back together with. But let's take a look at some of the features of this revolver. It's a 4-inch barrel, it's blued obviously. This is from the time period when they did pinned barrels. So the barrel is pinned in place there. The cylinder is recessed back here so it isn't flush. Actually, I can grab the Model 66 there and compare it. You can see that this is all flat back here where the cartridges sit. This one drops down in, it's kind of counterbored a little bit here at the back. All that is. But they quit doing that in, I think, 1982, if I'm not mistaken. And so that puts this as a late 70s, early 80s gun. Since it does have the normal return to the gas ring is on the cylinder, and it doesn't have the extra thin forcing cone here. So this puts this about in 1979, I would say. That and the serial number puts it right there, and it's very typical of that, and goes along with what the gentleman I bought it from told me, where he remembered buying it in the late 70s. Yeah, beautiful 19-4. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll do a part 2 here in just a second, to where you can see putting it back together and what I'm going to do to make sure that this is well preserved going down the road into the next 40 years before someone decides to take it apart again. So thanks for watching. Check back for part 2. Like and subscribe.